Welcome back to Wool Shift Dust. Hi, I'm Elysia, here with Luke, both loving being back on the mics to talk silo, right, Luke?
Yes, and apparently people have noticed that I've got a new mic. It's been mentioned in the Discord like a couple of times. So
By the
yeah,
audio engineers, no less.
by the audio engineers, no less.
Well, we are excited to welcome everyone to our first mailbag of the season. As we've said, the community is a big part of our show from the beginning, from season one, but it's a little bit different this year because we have our screeners, so we're recording the episodes ahead of time so that we can drop them at the same time as the episodes. So we didn't want to miss out on the community discussion, so we're doing these separate mailbags where we'll just be talking about the feedback. Today, it's just feedback for the first episode so far. So definitely do listen first to our breakdown of season 2, episode 1, The Engineer, which you'll find in the same Will Shift Dust public feed. Now we've gotten some feedback so far from our community. This is going to be a shorter episode this week since we're recording this just a couple days after the first episode aired, and not everyone's gotten a chance to watch and get their thoughts in. But we'll be doing these mailbag episodes every week or two, probably every couple weeks. We're going to see how we can work it out in our schedule and how much mail comes in. So just keep sharing your thoughts via woolshiftdustpodcast@gmail.com, the Lorehounds Discord, or ping us on Blue Sky, and you'll find all those links in the show notes. So, Luke, I did mention the screeners, and we have agreed, and we are not watching ahead of the episodes we're recording for the episode breakdowns.
Yeah, you have no idea how big a sacrifice this is, listeners. I am so tempted to just completely binge the whole of season 2, but I will abstain. I will be abstemious and I will be good, and I will only watch one episode per week so that we're not getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, now we have to wait almost an entire week to watch the next episode because we delayed our recording. But I do have to. Within those episode breakdowns, we have not seen past that episode, so all of our speculation is genuine. But since we have to wait until the episodes have actually aired and people have been able to watch and send in feedback before we can record these mailbag roundups, that does mean that we will have watched a bit ahead of that by the time we're doing this. So right now, full disclosure, Luke and I have watched through episode 3, but we promise not to give anything away other than what we've already said since Comic-Con. We already knew episode 2 was going to be about the other silo, which is numbered 18, and the new one from the first episode is 17, and the character she meets at the end of that episode is Solo. And now that I know that all of those things are confirmed within the first 2 minutes of episode 3, I feel fine about saying it.
Yep.
But yes, so the episode 3 is the next to pick up on this story because episode 2 is in the other silo. It just makes it easier to have the names for things, so we're going to keep using those names. Luke, what is our spoiler policy otherwise?
Okay, so Elysia has read all the books, the series of books by Hugh Howey that the TV series Silo is based upon. I haven't read any of them, so I am the fountain of all ignorance. So Elysia and the community at large are protecting my book innocence. So we will be referring back to stuff that has happened in season 1.
And the book ignorance of the rest of the community, and all the other people.
Yeah, and the book ignorance of the rest of the community as well. So we will be referring back to stuff that happened in season 1. We will be referring back to stuff that was said at the Comic-Con event. And we'll obviously be talking about the events of episode 1. And Elysia will be referring to stuff that has happened in the books that's already been talked about, revealed on screen.
Right. So, spoiler alert, all of season 1, first episode of season 2, the Comic-Con reveals that I just ran through, and that is actually it. And all of those, there's going to be no Comic-Con reveals left very soon. So we don't have to give that warning anymore. And I will keep mum about anything from the books that has not yet appeared on screen. So no spoilers here. We have a separate spoiler feed called the Book Club, where Abby and I go deep in all the spoilers, including weekly spoiler casts. More about that at the end of the episode. Luke, Just a small tease, though, for the curious. No spoilers, of course. How would you rank the 3 episodes of this season that we've seen so far?
Okay, I'm gonna go 2, 3, 1.
I agree.
But there
I
is
agree.
there is very little in it between all 3 of them.
Hmm. I agree. Although, to be honest, one was I liked one, but I liked it less than the other two. It was
Yeah,
just because the other two get more political, and yeah,
yeah.
that's
That's like I said, I'm a military history buff.
hmm
You know,
I'm a
so
writer psychologist. Yeah,
yeah, Alicia's a writer psychologist, so we're just pre-programmed to find the political bit of
right.
Silo more interesting.
Then the
Oh,
action. Yeah.
speaking of Abby from the book club, she reached out to me on Blue Sky. She agrees with me that the bit about the way Juliet
Oh,
gets the
the
helmet
helmet.
off in episode 1 was stupid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't disagree. I think that part was better in the books for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, so those are our rankings as a tease, and over the next couple of weeks, you guys will all find out why. But we are focusing here today. We are going to be only talking about episode 1 of season 2, The Engineer, and I think we're ready to.
Now opening the listener feedback channel.
So, guess what? The first piece of feedback is from me. So, at the end of last season, in the episode 9 breakdown of last season, I made 8 predictions for the final to myself, secret predictions, and I said that I would reveal them as they have been confirmed on the show. So, in the season 1 breakdown, I confirmed that I got 2 of the predictions wrong that were disproven by the finale. One was that I thought that she would get down to the digger room and go into the water and find that door, but she did not. There was a reference to the door, but no, we'll count that as wrong. I also thought that she'd wind up in a cell next to Lucas and they'd have a moment because that's a nice moment from the books, but they stole that from me. She had a nice moment with her dad instead. And I got 2.5 of the predictions correct. So I discuss these more in the breakdown, but basically I said she'd go back down to the down deep and be arrested down there and sent to clean. And when Juliet went out to clean, she wouldn't clean because she'd been given extra time because she helped someone, probably Walker, figure out that they were using tape and other parts for the suits designed to fall apart and let people die. And the half is instead of cleaning, I said Juliet would walk over the hill and the green scenery would glitch out and she'd see a wasteland dotted with other silos. That part was proved in the finale and proved in the beginning of this season was the second half of that prediction, which was that the nearest silo would have bodies piled up out the door. So there we go. And the finale also confirmed another half prediction that I said maybe we'd see a lone guy in the silo stirring awake and locked in a room. So that leaves 2 related predictions I thought might happen in the season 1 finale that have yet to play out. So,
Hmm.
just putting that out there.
Not bad. Not bad. That's a pretty
Mhm.
solid. That's a pretty solid record.
I mean, so this is really just kind of a measure of like how close are they sticking to the book. So I guess that's like a report card for how
Yeah,
well
and I mean,
they're implementing the main plot points.
yeah, and I mean that kind of answer is they seem to be sticking fairly close to the books, but not slavishly close to the
Definitely not.
books. When there is a battle, when there is a more televisual thing to do, when there is something that works better in
Right.
a visual
Well,
medium, they're doing it.
I would say even more so that they've just added so much, like characters like Judge Meadows, for instance. And yeah.
So they're not sort of changing the world of the silo, but they are building it out sideways.
Yeah, quite a bit. Quite a bit.
Okay.
Do you want to read YB's her intro to her? We can take turns with her 4 governance and innovation takeaways. So, by the way, this was shared. Soph YB, as Silo's in. Hi, Soph. She shared this on Blue Sky, and I asked if I could share it here because I think she did an excellent job. This is a summary from her season 1 rewatch.
Yeah. Full governance and innovation takeaways from Apple TV Silo Series 1 by Hugh Howey. As Juliet pats down her heat tape and pursues the truth outside in season 2, And by way of a geeky refresh, here are some life and leadership lessons as delivered by Soph.
1. Information is power. Silo authorities use practical and psych methods, no elevators, taboo, limits on research to restrict communications and knowledge accumulation while deploying propaganda and distractions like public holidays. Transparency and learning from the past are the key to democracy and progress. Do you agree?
Yep, I think that's very true, and it's certainly true that the control that the authorities exert in the silo is as much psychological as it is physical. I would also
Mm-hmm.
say that it's easier for the authorities in the silo to control population just because of the size of the silo and the limited size of the silo, even though it is big enough to hold 10,000 people. It's, there's no wilderness, there's no place to get away from the authorities. And it is quite a regimented society, everybody has their specific role within it. I'd
Mm-hmm.
also add that we found out in season 1 that the authorities in the silo actually follow a kind of weird eugenics policy as well. They only let certain people within the silo breed
Mm-hmm.
to try and sort of genetically eliminate undue curiosity. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure that's actually how genetics work, but it's certainly what they're attempting to do.
Well, sure. Yeah, I think curiosity is at least partially a genetic trait.
Yeah.
Um,
So, point 2, judicial independence and due process are key to our safety and survival. Sacrifice this and there is no backup. In the show, judicial serve the agenda of the executive through surveillance and arbitrary punishment, not the people they supposedly exist to protect. And is that a scales of justice emoji after that?
yep.
I think that it is. Yeah, that's certainly a good point. And not to get too heavy in a feedback episode, but it's also a good point given the events that are taking place in the real world right now.
Mm.
So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
good points, Oath.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think all of this is very applicable to the real world,
Yeah.
including number 3, ignore the people at the bottom at your peril. The marginalized down deepers run essential services without recognition or the same economic mobility opportunities as bureaucrats, quote unquote, up top. This leads to unrest, resentment, and a fractured society, which threatens all lives in the silo.
I like this one. This one
Mhm.
is particularly apposite, I think. The way Soph puts this is humans are going to human, which I
Absolutely.
want to get on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Despite reproductive control and oppression, a covert group of flamekeepers, in inverted commas, keep hope alive over decades through stories, symbols, and education. There will always be a minority ready to step into the unknown, push boundaries, and risk great sacrifice to seek truth.
Yeah. And she finishes also, don't mess with Rebecca Ferguson. Have we learned nothing from Dune? And then she kindly recommended our podcast and the book club and tagged Abby, Luke, and I.
That was very nice. That was very nice of you, Soph.
Yeah, very, very well put, succinct summary of what we're seeing go wrong and why we're so worried about Silo 18 going into next week. And humans are going to human absolutely deserves to be on a t-shirt.
Yeah, it absolutely deserves to be on a t-shirt.
Okay. So we also heard from Duve71, aka Stu, and he says, so just watched episode 1 of Silo season 2. Phew, it's been a while, but a great cold open. Are we in Silo 18's past seeing the rebellion? And now we know, of course, it was Silo 17's rebellion. Good to see that they are continuing the posing of questions and where necessary, just going straight to an answer. We are seeing another Silo. That image of Juliet walking through the field of corpses, blimey. I should have let you read this one with the British accent.
Blimey.
Then they top that with her in the entrance stairway, silhouetted by the pale lights from outside, surrounded by stacks of bodies. We know what it must have been like, the rush of euphoria, to be looking to escape the silo, and just as suddenly the terror of succumbing to an invisible foe, killing you and everyone around you. A very powerful and thoughtful introduction back into the world of Silo. Shame they didn't do the rancid soup/stew of the book. Haha. Loved the nod to the color coded jumpsuits of the book. Also, the subtle hints that whilst the bones, quote unquote, of the silo seem the same, this world is different to Silo 18. This silo has more decoration. It has a department called sheet metal, just slight differences, but shown with deftness of production design and direction. And just saying, we don't know. Silo 18 probably does also have a sheet metal department. We just haven't seen it. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Stu continues, I also thought it was smart to reintroduce Juliet through the challenges she needed to traverse. When confronted with the gaps, she engineers her way out of it. That's who she is. Lovely to see the little flashbacks to her growing up in engineering. I hope we get to see more of these as they humanize Jules a bit more, as she sometimes comes off as this world's Ripley/Sarah Connor. I'm going to have to go back to the scene where she enters IT, as there were some writing on the doors as she opened them. A solid opener, and I just want episode 2 right now. Looking forward to listening to your and Luke's takes on the pod. P.S. I did manage to pause and read it. On the left, it said, any survivors, please help us. On the right-hand door, survivors, help us. Thoughts, Luke?
Okay, that if you don't mind, I'm going to start in reverse order with that, because reading that writing, that's really interesting. Because that kind of implies that not all the people in Silo 17 died at the same time. That there may have been people who did not go outside, who sort of, tried to survive within the silo, and either couldn't because the silo is filling up with water, or because of the destruction within the silo, particularly the destruction we see of the bridges between levels, like the public services within the silo collapsed. So there is a possibility, I wouldn't put it any further than that Solo is not the only person alive in the silo.
Okay. And you think that because of I guess, yeah, okay, just because they mentioned survivors, because we don't know, that could have been written by the dead bodies we saw, as far as we know so far. We saw the dead bodies outside Solo's vault door.
Possibly, but there were only, I believe there were only 2 of them.
Yeah,
maybe there were only 2
Yeah.
survivors, but from what Stu was saying, there are. I sort of, again, this is headcanon on my part, but maybe I don't think there are many survivors left, but maybe there were groups of survivors, say in the mids, who were just at the sweet spot between not drowning and not being caught by the atmosphere from outside, but couldn't survive long term because the services necessary for survival in the silo weren't working anymore. Particularly mechanical.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we don't know yet how far that flood goes up, but we know mechanical is definitely
mechanical's definitely underwater.
Yeah. It seems to go up further than it does in the book even, but we'll have to wait for further clarification from future episodes. Okay. Any more thoughts on what Stu said?
I thought the comparison to, or rather the way they avoid Juliet turning into Ripley or Sarah Connor, I think that's a good point. I think in the hands of less skilled writers, less skilled directors, and a less skilled actor than Rebecca Ferguson, there is a real risk that character could turn into a pound shop Ripley. And again, talking about the quality of the writing, it's easy to see a universe in which a less well put together silo diddles the audience for 20 or 30 minutes about what silo we're in, and is this Are we seeing the rebellion in Silo 18? I agree with Stu. I like the way it posed a question and then answered it and moved on.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of gave you that sort of that couple of minutes of doubt, then answered the question and moved on.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it when they don't drag out the questions too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on Stu's?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Then this is a good spot to take a quick break, and we'll be right back to discuss the rest of the feedback. See you in a sec. Okay, and we're back. And next up is from Her Royal Bubbliness. Do you want to read this one, Luke?
So, yeah, Her Royal Bubbliness says, I've watched Silo season 2, episode 1, and can't wait to listen to the podcast. That's very nice of you to say. The episode didn't have a lot of action going on, but I loved seeing... I don't think that's true, Your Royal Bubbliness. But I loved seeing Juliet as a child, how she has always loved to fix things, and she found people that encouraged her to continue and appreciated that part about her. She possibly felt less alone and lonely than she had felt, especially after her mother's death, with everyone around her avoiding her, as she told Walker. It kind of gave context as to why her first instinct upon entering this hellhole of a silo is to go straight into knowing her surroundings and fixing what she could. I'm curious to see what the rest of the season holds. I could understand why she's dragging up those bodies.
Oh, she
I'm
couldn't.
guessing-
She meant to say,
Oh.
she said. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't understand why she's dragging up the bodies. I'm guessing the soldiers of that silo. Why is she dragging their bodies up? Or maybe I'm missing something.
So just to pause there for a second, we did answer that in our episode breakdown, was that she dragged them up basically so that she could use the rope that was tying them
Yeah.
up so she could make her rope swing.
Yeah. Hearing that silo theme again makes you feel the stakes are just getting higher and higher. We are so back.
Woo woo.
That's so with about 6 zeros and back with 3 Ks.
That's how back we are.
That's how back we are, yeah.
Well, I have to say, having our first piece of email from Precious from Her Royal Bubbliness makes me feel like we are so back.
Yeah, but what do you think about the idea that there wasn't much action in this episode?
No, I mean, I think it's like we were saying, there is physical action in terms of, the engineering and the swinging with the rope and all that stuff, but it doesn't, the type of action that I love the most from this TV show, at least, is the political action. And it didn't have that because it was just, Juliet
Yeah, fair point.
MacGyvering and remembering things, basically.
Yeah, fair point.
All right, so Nancy M says, watched season 2, episode 1 this morning. Wow, so worth the wait to get back into this world. I loved how the flashbacks helped inform what Juliet is going through. Such effective storytelling. Immediately following, I caught up listening to part 2 of the season 1 rewatch and the pod for this episode. So yeah, which she's talking about, the part 2 of the season 1 rewatch is that's a spoiler cast that's available to subscribers and season pass holders. You can find information and links about that in the show notes. But yeah, so Nancy says, there was something off for me about one item you kept discussing, the wound on Juliet's arm. I was sure that she got that injury in the recycling shaft as objects were being thrown down on her and maybe the fall onto the recycling pile at the bottom, and that Walker was bandaging her arm up just before Judicial entered. Having done a full rewatch of season 1 this past week, everything is fresh in my mind, but I just went back to check just in case. I can confirm that Juliet's wound is not from the toxic outside, but from her fall down the recycling shaft.
Okay. Now that you mention it, Nancy, yes, I can remember what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of, yeah, we have to remember that in universe, that just happened.
Right.
Like, that literally just happened the same day as she went outside. So, yes, that does make sense.
But if that's on the same wrist that was exposed to the outside air, does that make you worried more that there was an open wound?
Yeah, there are a bunch of like harmful microbes that are gonna give Juliet some kind of gnarly infection.
Oh yeah, whatever's yeah, that is interesting that they I mean, yeah, thank you so much, by the way, Nancy, for the correction.
Yeah,
That
thank you,
is, yeah.
Nancy.
I also just did a rewatch and I still didn't, necessarily piece the two together. But I think it was also because I was just thinking like about that arm being exposed in this particular episode. But it must be there must be a reason why they had those two things happen to the same arm, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, like, yeah, is Juliet gonna come down with like some really bad fever or um some awful infection later on in the season? Possibly, possibly.
Who knows? Who knows? Okay, do you want to read what Abby said? So, Abby, by the way, for anyone who wants to hear Abby's full thoughts, her detailed thoughts, you can listen to the book club spoiler cast because she is my co-host there, so she shares it all there. But she gave us a fun little thought here.
Yeah. So this is from Abby. I just really loved how her flashback memories match her current state of mind, the loneliness, the frustration, the resolve. And so her very best friends kept helping her one silo away.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that too.
yeah,
Almost get a little emotional thinking about it that way. That's yeah, and you just can imagine that Shirley and Walker would be so happy to know that things they've said to her over the years are what is carrying her through this hard moment.
definitely. And I think the backstory with Juliet and Shirley explained a lot about their relationship. Like we'd
Mm,
spent quite a bit of time with Juliet and Walker in season one, but
mhm.
less with Juliet and Shirley.
Yeah.
And I think it's going too far to say they filled in a gap, but they humanized that relationship. They made it more whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's also just like it just shows also how, the reason why Juliet can be this super person is because she has, despite, her mother and her brother dying and all that, she had a mother and brother who loved her. She has a father who's loved her in his own way, even though it took him a few decades to learn how to show it again. Um, but she's also, most of all, she's had that whole family down there in mechanical that's really given her that sense of security. And I think a person usually they are better at venturing outside their comfort zone when they have a sense of security backing them up.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. And like again, I think with worse direction, there is a way in which those scenes could have felt a little bit on the nose, but I think they were handled really well. The way it was cut together, the way you cut back and forth between the present and the flashback. And again, just the quality of the acting, not just on Rebecca Ferguson's part, but on the part of the two child actors as well. I mean, I think this is just, there's so much, you can't like, you've got to focus on the plot and what's going on in this in podcasts like this. But I think it
Mhm.
is worth pausing from time to time and just to give a hat tip to just how well put together this is as a show.
Mhm. Yes, no, I mean, I think the production design, I mean, we talked a lot more about the production design in the first season because obviously the silo still looks the same, but it is that doesn't diminish in any way what a feat of artistry it was for the entire production design team and just how across the board from the technical side, editing, as you pointed out, everyone's just working at the top of their game, and you can feel that this show, it feels like a labor of love.
It does. It really does.
Hmm. So for Elisa says, I thought it was interesting to start the season. I thought it was an interesting start to the season. Jules the badass inside a nearly dead or empty silo. More on the outside world. It's good to be back. And yes, yes, it's good to be back.
It is indeed.
Trying to read Rebecca Ferguson fan. Yay, we're back. We are
Yay!
officially
And
back.
they found us on Blue Sky as well. We're getting the band back together. It's lovely.
Yes.
Great start to the season. I love the opening with Juliet MacGyvering her way through the aftermath. Good intro to Solo, brackets, Steve Zahn, the name of the actor. Fun fact, Rebecca is a certified scuba diver, and she said it was hard trying to act like she couldn't swim. When I first read that comment, it reminded me of, do you know the movie Space Jam?
Yes.
There's a scene in Space Jam where the aliens steal all the basketball players' ability to play basketball.
Uh-huh.
And I remember reading an interview with the director, and they said that was by far and away the hardest scene to shoot, because you can't get a load of professional basketball players to pretend they don't know how to play basketball. Even if they want to, the muscle memory makes it really hard for them not to be good at basketball.
Well, I can imagine. And I don't know. I'm not a certified scuba diver, but if you ask me to pretend I can't swim, I'd be like, it would look like a parody of someone pretending they could not swim.
Exactly. Because you can,
Right.
even if you're telling your body not to do that,
Right.
it's going to do that.
It's instinct and muscle memory, as you said.
Yeah. Did you see the segment on Seth Meyers where Rebecca discussed how her cleaning suit was especially made due to her claustrophobia? No, Rebecca Ferguson fan, I can't say that I did. Did you see that, Elysia?
No, I have not. And I'm curious about that. So I wonder what sort of maybe should we pause and watch that real quick?
Yeah, maybe.
Hello, editor Elysia from the future, here to tell you things. So we're about to come back from this short little pause and tell you that we looked at the video and it's too long for us to watch on the spot, and that was absolutely true. However, since I come from the future, I have now seen the video and I can tell you things. So I can tell you basically what it is about. She talks about her claustrophobia and some other things. Like, I didn't realize she doesn't like to ride in elevators because of it. And also that they modified the helmet so that she could basically pop it out quickly if needed. And yeah, just also about the horrific plaster process. If you want to see that for yourself, then there's a link in the show notes to that interview. And thank you again to Rebecca Ferguson fan for bringing that to our attention. Okay, now back to past Elysia and Luke. So yeah, we considered pausing it and watching it right now, but it's a bit too long. So we'll include a link in the show notes to that interview for anyone who's curious. But yeah, I'm interested to know how exactly they modified her suits. Like, did they give her a bigger helmet or something? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, claustrophobia, it's really, especially when something is covering my mouth and nose and throat. It's a breathing thing.
It's an odd mix as well to be a qualified qualified scuba diver and have claustrophobia as well.
Well, because that's exactly why I never became a qualified scuba diver. It is also, time and money situation. It was always something I vaguely wanted to do, but when I think about it, because of that whole covering my mouth thing, that makes me a bit nervous. And actually, I was more interested in free diving, which is not dangerous if you're not crazy competitive about it. It's just
yeah. So it's a bit of an odd combination there.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so our final feedback for now comes from the 604 Lovely and just says, I'm back.
They're about 6 E's in
Yeah.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I finished season 1. OMG, the last 2 episodes, many exclamation points. And just saw season 2, ep 1, all caps, dead skull emoji. Holy adrenaline dump, Batman. Which I think is a nice note to end the feedback on.
Yeah.
You have any more thoughts about any?
No, it was an adrenaline dump.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said in the episode review, I think the most satisfying thing about it was looking at all Juliet's MacGyvering and having that nice moment of going, oh,
That's what she's
yeah,
doing.
that's clever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, the highlights were definitely, of course, her coming in through the bodies of, I'm a sicko. I'm like, yes, yes. And also just like, just even though I've read the books, as we always say, doesn't mean I know it's going to happen because they've been changing a lot. So while I'm investigating for clues, like, people who haven't read the books are investigating for clues like, oh, what is the nature of this world? And I'm investigating for clues like, oh, is the nature of this world still the same as the books? So that was a key sequence for that. Yeah. And it was just also at the end, it was a strong end as well that Steve Zahn introduced his solo. Great piece of casting, great introduction. As you said, just that matter of fact, like, I understand that you're trying to get in.
But I'm just gonna have to kill you.
just so you know, that's the way things are. Yeah. Can confirm that he continues to exercise good taste in music.
Yes, he
Yeah.
does. We'll talk about that more when we do the episode 3
Right.
breakdown. But yeah.
Yeah. And so this was our first teaser of a mailbag episode. We know it's only been a few days, and so many of you haven't had a chance to get your thoughts in yet. But as I said, please do keep sending them in, and we will do another roundup in a week or two, probably two. You can send those thoughts to willshiftuspodcast@gmail.com. Share them with us on Discord, where we have a full forum set up. There's the under affiliates podcast there. You have the Will Shift Dust chat, but there's also a full forum under current shows where we have separate chats for each episode. So you can talk full spoilers for the episodes in each of those chats, and also a book spoiler chat. And Luke is totally going to spend more time there, right?
I am totally going to spend more time there.
After the marking.
Yeah, I'm definitely working on it. You confirm I have replied to comments.
Yeah.
I've got to learn how to do the redacted bit again, so that
It's
I don't.
the two long pipes on each side of the text you want to black out.
Right. Okay. Good. Also, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the people who have followed me on Blue Sky since episode 1 came out. I can't say that all of you are podcast listeners, but it seems like the majority of you are, and thanks for the follow. And if you've got any thoughts on Silo or sci-fi in general, just drop me a line. But thanks for the follow, and I'll be as active as I can be.
Yes. I'm a social media addict. I've just found a new, healthier outlet for my addiction, so I will be active there for sure. You can find all those links in the show notes. And of course, Luke and I will be back to discuss episode 2. You will hear that conversation when that episode goes live on the 2nd. In the meantime, check out my spoiler cast discussion with Abby. This week's is titled A Tale of Two Rebellions, and that is available to subscribers and season pass holders. And welcome to the new Silazins and Storyzins. I will shout out the newest members by name during the regular weekly breakdowns, but just wanted to say that I am very appreciative for those of you who are signing up to go deeper on Silo. So we have the regular subscription model on both Patreon, and actually I especially recommend Supercast. Supercast just has more options, including, so there's the monthly, where you get access to the Silo episodes, of course, and also other Hugh Howey books, a Dune series that's starting after this Silo coverage is over, and our seasonal specials. Like Luke and I are already working on our. Should we tell them what our theme is for our winter holiday special?
Yeah, we're doing our winter holiday Christmas special.
Yeah. So our winter holiday Christmas special is going to be about A Christmas Carol. We're going to talk about Christmas Carol adaptations, film adaptations in the public feed, but subscribers will get an extra access to an extra episode where we break down the novella that it's based on. And also there will be an audio drama with the story that was kind of like the practice version that Dickens did before he wrote A Christmas Carol. So that episode, that extra episode with Luke and I will only be available to subscribers, but there is an option if you're not interested in that stuff and you're like, I'm just here for Silo. There are Silo season passes. You'll find that link in the show notes, and there are 3 options for that. You can sign up for a pass for just season 1 coverage, which includes the book breakdowns, so all the book and short story breakdowns, and also the season 1 rewatch episodes with all the spoilers. And there's also a season 2 option, which obviously includes all the spoiler casts that we're releasing weekly for season 2. Plus, there is, of course, a combined option where you can get all that stuff together for a reduced price. So if you're curious about that, link in the show notes again. And if you're not interested in all that, that's great. We're just glad to have you listening. If you enjoyed this listen and feel like you got something out of it, the best ways you can help us are to share this episode with other people who you think might be interested. Share our episode breakdown, especially. So that's probably a better place to begin. And it really helps an enormous amount if you leave us a positive review wherever you're listening. It's just a small free thing that really makes our podcast more visible when people are searching for Silo podcasts. So I did just, Luke, did you get a chance to listen back to the Dune prophecy prep episode that I released in the feed?
Not yet, but it's on my to-do list.
Well, that was a conversation between you, David, and I talking about the Doom Prophecy show that's starting, well, shortly after we're recording this, actually,
Yep.
probably before it's released. So definitely check out that prep ep in the public Will Shift Dust feed. So we've got that 3-way discussion between the 3 of us about, what to consider from this world and going into this story. And there's also, it includes a breakdown of the novella Imperial Court from the Sands of Dune collection. And this is the last story written in the timeline before the show Dune Prophecy is set. So 10,000 years before the original Dune story. But that's all explained in that prep ep. There's lots of other stuff happening, of course, throughout the Lorehounds network. Definitely check out the Lorehounds feed itself, where you'll find another separate prep ep for Dune Prophecy, and David will be leading weekly breakdowns there with me of the Dune Prophecy episodes. And also check out Properly Howard and some really hot, spicy takes on the Penguin finale there. The Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, of course, is more with me and my passions of Star Wars, and a bunch of guests who have a special interest in that universe. And Radioactive Ramblings is continuing their Ramblers Rising, Red Rising series, but also doing Ghibli movie covers. And of course, check out Nevermind the Music for Psychology Meets Music. And how's it going with It Could Be Said?
Frankly, it isn't going with It Could Be Said at the moment because I'm swamped with work.
Right.
And so is one of my co-hosts, Simon. So I think we're on a little bit of a hiatus, particularly given how much you and I have got to record in the next few weeks, Elysia. I think
so
we're on
much
a little bit of a
Christmas
hiatus.
in Silo. Yeah,
I think we're on a little bit of a hiatus till we do our year-end episode.
Okay.
Now, but so It Could Be Said is a podcast I do with a couple of friends from university. We talk about British politics. We talk about international politics. We talk about culture that isn't sci-fi, basically. So music, TV, movies, theatre occasionally. We don't have a regular schedule for it. It's just when the 3 of us feel enough topics have been gathered, we will record a podcast. Basically, if you want to listen to 3 men talk in a virtual pub, that's basically the format of the podcast.
All right. Well, and as far as this podcast, we will be back in your ears with our episode 2 breakdown on Friday. Until then, just remember to quote a wise woman named Soph Wybe, humans gonna human.
Yeah, if we ever have merch, we're gonna get that on t-shirts. So
if
the podcast ever grows to the point where we need merch.
Yeah, well, we'll have to negotiate with her for the rights.
Yeah.
Humans gonna human.
Humans gonna human.